All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Um, First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mitchell Williams. I teach at Portland State University back in Portland, Oregon, and I also teach at Oregon Health and Science University, also in Portland, Oregon. These are two different institutions. The first one that I mentioned, PSU, is an undergraduate, has an undergraduate curriculum that prepares students, pre-medical students, pre-dental students, and pre-pharmacy students, or at least any kind of pre-professional track students, to go on and explore further professional medical programs. OHSU has the only dental program um, in the state, but it also has a medical program and a pharmacy, sort of a collaborative pharmacy program between Oregon Health and between itself and Oregon State University. So this is sort of where I teach. This is what I've been teaching for the past 4 years or so. And today's lecture that I'm going to sort of present to you is going to be uh, something that I always teach in spring of every year, at least so far. I've been teaching this class called Biophysical Chemistry um, in spring of every year at Oregon Health and Science University. And it's a very, just like what I have today here before me, I have how many of you guys, do you guys know how many of you are here today? Yeah, there's about 350, good 350 people in this room today. I typically get about 800 and 890 students in that class, and they come from different states, different universities, as well as different curricula. Now, this class has been sort of interesting to me, not only as an instructor, but sometimes I get to take it from a student point of view, and I also get to realize that there are some difficulties and challenges that students have to go through in order to pass this class. And typically, I'm known to make students think out of the box, and so today's lecture is one of my favorites, although not my most favorite, but it's one of my favorite lectures that I typically give in that class. And so I've tweaked it a little bit to fit the purposes of this lecture or this presentation, so it might be a little shorter than what it normally is. And so today we're going to start talking about, biological thermodynamics, and sort of in a way that gives an overview of biophysical chemistry. And biophysical chemistry is the science that has emerged very recently to tell us about the biological phenomena and how they exist from a physical chemical point of view. And so in biology, we sort of look at the macro level of things and biological, especially biological phenomena and biological processes. And what we do is that at least in this class, what we do is that we go in and we try to, explain how these phenomena or these processes occur from our knowledge from physical chemistry. And that requires, sort of some background knowledge in biology itself, physics, as well as chemistry. And that sort of goes without saying. But background knowledge is really essential in these areas, and that's what I tell students on the very first day of class. And so I hope that there are students here who are planning on taking this class, because I've been advocating for this class for the last 4 years, and to be offered not only at an institute that offers a medical program or some kind of professional or graduate program, but also at an undergraduate level. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it will get approved, because we are getting, it's a very interesting class, and it's very important and essential, and we've been getting sort of requests to involve other universities from other states and from Oregon itself to come in and have their students take this class. And so once again, we'll pass it on to undergraduates and sort of minimize the level of difficulty that it involves. And as you will see, this is going to be a very, very challenging presentation to some students who are looking at it from 3 different perspectives, which is sort of the goal of the course in general. And so, generally speaking, in any kind of interaction that occurs between molecules of different types or different kinds, there is some kind of electronic state that governs this interaction, and so, or these interactions. And so what we tend to do is that we tend to boil down any kind of biological process to just these atomic and sometimes even subatomic interactions or subatomic states. And so when we look at, students typically come in and ask me, well, how come we just don't learn about physics and atoms? And I tell them that if you only look at the basics of things, you're not going to be able to apply and understand the applications of those basics. So, for instance, physics depends or heavily relies on mathematics and advanced levels of mathematics. If you have it, it would be handy. But the thing is, if you just look at math and I tell you that 1 plus 1 is 2 or 3 plus 4 is 7, and I just stop right there, you're never going to be able to understand what the applications of that is. And if you're a first-time learner, first-time student in that class, when I tell you that, you'll say, well, okay, how do I apply that? What benefit or what good can that bring? And I typically go in and tell them in a closer context to what we're talking about. If I tell you that carbon, right, 3 carbons combined with 8 hydrogens to give you propane, right? To give you propane, that's from organic chemistry. We know that. But why do we care? How do we apply that to real life? What are the implications of that in the real world? And the answer to that question is when you fill up your tanks with propane and grill something using that that one tank that you just got exchanged or refilled, basically that's when you start appreciating that when you combine 3 carbons with 8 hydrogens, right, or 4 H2s, that's going to tell you how useful that is to you, and how you can make propane is, well, industrially very well known. And so it has to be pressed and just different stuff. And so the applications are really important, and that's what we're looking at in this class. And that's why it's really important to medical students, dental students, pharmacy students, as well as undergraduate and graduate students. And that's the reason for advocating for it. Now, I started sort of mentioning that we need a lot of things to talk about and to define in the first place. And I think the first one that comes to mind is this word thermodynamics. And it's basically a study that tells you how spontaneous a reaction can be and whether it's going to proceed towards completion or not. And in general, we know that thermodynamics is a path-independent study. That is, when you go from the state of the reactants to the state of the products, all we care about is how much energy you spent and whether that's feasible. Okay, or whether that pathway or reaction profile is feasible and suitable for that particular reaction. And if it is, then that's how it occurs, because real processes tend to be spontaneous, and we'll define what spontaneity is as part of this lecture. But basically, we don't really care about how you get from reactants to products as long as you define the thermodynamic parameters of that. That is, Gibbs energy, the enthalpy as well as the entropy, and that's entropy in particular is a very important concept. Now, a lot of people confuse these two. What is the difference between heat and energy? So when you turn on the heater in a room, somebody comes in